Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents Emotional Intelligence for Dummies by Stephen J. Stein, Ph.D. Narrated by Bill Andrew Quinn. Publisher's note: this audiobook has bonus material. Please contact whomever you purchased this audiobook from to request the material. Forward. When you boil it down, emotional intelligence is the idea that emotions are useful. They are important sources of information. Emotions help us solve problems, and they guide our social interactions. And importantly, some people harness the wisdom of emotions better than others. So, who are these emotionally intelligent people? They are individuals you know, and you might be one yourself. If you are the kind of person who is skilled at reading emotions in another person's face or interpreting your feelings, if you are a person who can put your feelings into words, if you are a person who manages your emotions effectively and helps others to do the same, and if you are a person who uses your emotions to think clearly about something or as clues to what might be going on in social situations, well then, you are likely someone who is emotionally intelligent. And if you are not sure whether you are this kind of person, perhaps this book will help you to learn these skills. In 1990, when John D. Mayer and I published the first scientific article describing a theory of emotional intelligence in the journal Imagination, Cognition, and Personality, we weren't sure anyone would find the idea that people differ in their abilities to identify emotions, understand these feelings, manage emotions, and use them to guide thinking and action all that interesting or persuasive. We were wrong. Today, in the spring of 2009, while writing this forward, I typed the phrase emotional intelligence into the Google search engine, and it yielded more than 3 million hits. Interest in emotional intelligence has exploded, and we know a few things now that we didn't know 2 decades ago. First, we know that you can measure emotional intelligence, and the author of this book, Stephen Stein, is Chief Executive Officer of the company that publishes assessment tools in this area of psychology, including a test we developed called the MISCEAT. Second, we know that high scores on the MISCEAT and other measures of emotional intelligence are related to psychological health, effectiveness at work, and fulfilling social relationships. And third, we know that people can learn how to improve these skills in many different ways. For example, our colleague Mark Brackett has developed and tested school curricula that help children learn emotional intelligence and do better in school. These conclusions make Dr. Stein's book especially timely. We know a lot more about emotional intelligence than we did 20 years ago, and he has synthesized this knowledge and presented it here for you in a very engaging and easily grasped way. However, reading about emotional intelligence isn't enough. It won't make you more emotionally intelligent overnight. I strongly encourage you to engage in the exercises described by Dr. Stein in this book and look for other ways to hone your emotional skills, perhaps by reading great literature, becoming more committed to the arts, or simply spending more time observing other people and reflecting on your own abilities, motives, and behaviors. Once you become aware of the skills involved in being a more emotionally intelligent individual, people watching will never quite be the same. There are no guarantees, of course, but I suspect Emotional Intelligence for Dummies will motivate you to adopt a broader view of what it means to be smart, and you will find yourself further developing the emotional skills that allow you to lead a more satisfying life. Peter Salovey, Ph.D. Chris Argyris, Professor of Psychology, Yale University. Introduction. Emotional intelligence. It sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? Just like jumbo shrimp. People tend to think of others as either emotional or intelligent, but not both. So just what is emotional intelligence? And why are you hearing about it only now? Emotional intelligence has a lot to do with being intelligent about your emotions. It involves the ability to recognize your own emotions as well as the emotions of other people. It includes understanding emotions. It also has to do with how you manage your emotions and how you manage other people's emotions. Psychologists have known about many of the concepts behind emotional intelligence for years, decades even, but the knowledge has been scattered, not really well organized or clearly formulated. When two psychologists, John Jack Mayer from the University of New Hampshire and Peter Salovey from Yale University, put together a theory that looks at both intelligence and emotions in 1989, the idea of emotional intelligence really started to take shape. The first scientific paper on the topic was published in 1990. Since that time, millions of copies of books have been sold about it. A number of psychologists, including our team at Multi Health Systems, MHS, as well as groups at Yale University, Rutgers University, the Center for Creative Leadership, and others, have carried out a great deal of research that looks at the impact of emotional intelligence at work, in families, with children, and basically anywhere that people interact with each other. Organizations have used the information researchers have discovered about emotional intelligence to select and develop their employees and to produce better leaders. Schools have used it to create more harmonious relationships among students, and it has been used with families to improve relationships. I hope an understanding of emotional intelligence can benefit you too. It can help mean the difference between success and failure in many of the things you do. About emotional intelligence for dummies. What does it mean to be emotionally intelligent? Does it really matter? What can you do about your or your children's emotional intelligence? Or for that matter, can you do anything to better manage the emotions of your relatives or friends? You can explore these questions and many others in Emotional Intelligence for Dummies. The purpose of this book is to provide you with a clear understanding of what emotional intelligence is about. Emotional intelligence is still a new area of study, and you can already find a combination of folklore and science mixed together through the initial exuberance of the media on this topic. I cover some of the science that explains emotional intelligence, but I go carefully beyond the science by expanding on some of those scientific findings. Here's some of the information that you can find in this book. The most common definitions of emotional intelligence. Information about the most validated tests or measures of emotional intelligence. Interesting ways to think about your own emotional intelligence as well as the emotional intelligence of people around you. Strategies to improve your and others' emotional intelligence. The importance of emotional intelligence at home, at work or school, with friends, and when dealing with strangers. One of the differences between obtaining traditional knowledge and figuring out how to improve your emotional intelligence is the importance of active participation. Although you can find out about many subjects passively through lectures and reading, you need to be more active to get a grip on emotional intelligence. Listening to this book can help you take the first step towards improving your EQ, emotional quotient. You also have to do some of the exercises and activities in this book to make a real difference in your ability to identify, understand, use, and manage your emotions. Foolish assumptions. I wrote this book making a few assumptions about you. I assume that you're a pretty well-adjusted human being who wants to improve yourself and possibly some of the people around you. You've probably read books about or experienced self-development programs before. You may not have felt completely satisfied with some of these books, tapes, lectures, or websites. You probably want to know what makes people tick. You may have come across people who surprised you with some of their behaviors. You may have wondered why some people who seem to be very smart in many ways have done some pretty foolish and self-defeating things. Or you may want to know why some people are overly disrespectful of others. Getting the scoop on emotional intelligence may help you put together some pieces in this puzzle. Conventions used in this book. I wrote this book, with the help of my editor, of course, in the For Dummies style, which makes the information that it contains easily accessible to almost anyone. I avoid using technical language or professional jargon as much as possible. When I do use technical terms, I define them for you. I include a number of stories that can help make the discussions more real for you. Many of these stories are based on real incidents or composites of situations and people I've known, but I've changed the names and circumstances to protect confidentiality. If you really want to get the most out of this book, get a spiral-bound notebook. Use that notebook to carry out the exercises and activities that I present throughout the book. Use your notebook often and reread what you've written from time to time to remind you of your progress and set forth your next set of goals. What you don't have to listen to. You don't have to listen to Emotional Intelligence for Dummies chapter by chapter, and you don't have to hear all the sections in any particular chapter. However, I do recommend that you listen to Chapter 1, which gives you a basic idea about the meaning of emotional intelligence and how you can benefit from developing it. If your goal is to change someone else's behavior, not your own, then you should probably get that person to listen to the first chapter as well. Each part of this book deals with a particular area in which you can apply emotional intelligence. So, if you're interested in work issues or parenting applications, for example, you can quickly skip to those areas. How this book is organized. Emotional Intelligence for Dummies is divided into 5 parts. Here's a description of what you can find in each part. Part 1. There's a new kind of intelligence in town. Part 1 provides an introduction to the idea of emotional intelligence. It explores what emotional intelligence is and what it isn't, and it begins to give you some insight into how an emotionally intelligent person operates. You can hear about the benefits of developing your own emotional intelligence and that of those around you. This part also looks at some of the ways emotional intelligence can apply to your life. I give you exercises and activities that can help improve your emotional intelligence. After you follow these activities, you may start to notice a difference in your relationships with other people. Part 2. The Essentials of Emotional Intelligence. In Part 2, you can get to the essence of emotional intelligence and what it can mean for you. I start with the science behind emotional intelligence. Although emotional intelligence is still a new area of study, the field has grown from one published scientific paper in 1990 to over 750 scientific papers in reviewed journals as of the time of this writing. Also, psychologists and graduate students have conducted hundreds of research presentations and have written articles for other research-oriented publications. The number of articles just keeps growing, which demonstrates that this is a legitimate area of study that's here to stay. In this part, you can find out a bit about the parts of the brain that are involved in helping you manage your emotions. Then, I address some of the differences between emotional intelligence, personality, and cognitive intelligence. You can hear about the importance of emotional self-awareness, one of the key components of emotional intelligence. I include some exercises that can help you improve your self-awareness, and you can use what you figure out to better manage your emotions. These skills can help you be more in charge of how you feel. Another essential component of emotional intelligence is empathy. You find out all about what empathy is, why it's important, and how you can improve it. Empathy is a skill that really differentiates the high performers when it comes to being emotionally intelligent. Finally, you can have more control over the emotions of other people with whom you deal. Your ability to influence others can help you better manage people you're close to, as well as complete strangers, even during times of stress. Part 3. Taking emotional intelligence to work. You don't leave your emotional brain at home when you arrive at work. Emotions have a tremendous impact in the workplace. You may encounter difficult people and situations at work, and using your emotional intelligence can help you navigate through these experiences. I show you how to use your emotional intelligence when dealing with a bullying boss, obnoxious coworkers, and disrespectful subordinates. I also explore the relationship between emotional intelligence and star performers at work. Understanding the importance of emotional intelligence and how you fit the job can help you figure out how you can go beyond personality and IQ in getting the right person in the right job. You can also find out how to deal more effectively with people at work. This part deals with the relationship between emotional intelligence and leadership. Leaders, meaning anyone who has to get one or more people to follow her, need to be emotionally intelligent. You can learn how to develop the most important leadership skills related to emotional intelligence in this part. I also talk about the emotionally intelligent workplace. How do you know whether you have one? How do you go about creating one? You can find answers to these questions and others in this part as well. Many parents have asked me about the importance of emotional intelligence in helping their kids get through college. A number of researchers and psychologists have done a great deal of research in this area, and you can hear about some of it in this part. Part 4. Using Emotional Intelligence at Home. How are your personal relationships? This part starts out by focusing on your closest or most intimate relationships, such as those with your spouse, intimate partner, or best friend. You confide in or bond with these people the most out of all your relationships. Maintaining and nurturing these relationships often requires conscious effort. I provide you with steps and tools that you can use to build and enhance these relationships. This part explains how you can be an emotionally intelligent parent as well. How well do you manage your emotions when you deal with your children? This part shows you ways that you can improve your self-control, even when your child or teenager seems to get out of hand. How do you raise an emotionally intelligent child? Everyone wants their children to succeed in life, and you know that, although IQ and ability are important, your child's emotional skills are every bit as important in his success. This part gives you some suggestions and examples that may be helpful when dealing with your children. Part 5. The Part of Tens. The Part of Tens is a feature of all For Dummies books. In Emotional Intelligence for Dummies, you can find quick lists that give you advice on how to improve your emotional intelligence, how to help difficult people you know with their emotional intelligence, and how to make the world a more emotionally intelligent place. Icons used in this book. A unique and incredibly useful feature of all For Dummies books is the inclusion of helpful icons that point you in the direction of valuable information, tips, and tricks. I will verbalize the icon before reading the icon's note in each instance. The tip icon points out helpful information that's likely to benefit your emotional intelligence. The remember icon marks a fact that's interesting and useful, something that you might want to remember for later use. The warning icon highlights a danger, telling you to pay attention and proceed with caution. The activity icon indicates an exercise that you may want to carry out. Get a spiral-bound notebook in which you can record your activities. The technical stuff icon indicates technical information, sometimes referred to as psychobabble. I try not to use too much of this language, but for purposes or accuracy, I sometimes need to. You can skip the sections marked with the technical stuff icon, although you may find them interesting. Where to go from here. You can listen to this book in any way you choose, although I recommend starting with the first part. Each chapter stands on its own and can help you better understand, improve, and use your emotional intelligence. If you want to get started working on your own emotional intelligence, go right to Chapter 3. Then, move on to Chapters 5, 6, and 7. If you have concerns about someone in your life and you want to change her behavior, go to Chapter 8. If you listen to this book through in its entirety and still want to go further in developing your emotional intelligence, you may want to contact a professional who's trained in this area. If you're looking for a professional trained in emotional intelligence assessment or coaching, contact us at ei4dummies@mhs.com. Part 1. There's a new kind of intelligence in town. In this part, I define emotional intelligence and give you some insight into how an emotionally intelligent person operates. You can see the benefits of developing emotional intelligence for both yourself and others around you. I also show you some of the ways emotional intelligence can apply to your life. The activities that I provide can help you improve your relationships with other people. Chapter 1. Feeling Smart. In this chapter, getting a feel for emotional intelligence, knowing how to manage your emotions, connecting with the emotions of others, bringing emotional intelligence into the workplace, practicing emotional intelligence at home. When most people think about what makes a smart person, they think of the school valedictorian, someone who's a whiz at math, flies through chemistry class, masters French and German, aces English literature, and tops the debating club. Being book smart means you can compute, retain, reformulate, and regurgitate all kinds of information. Although being smart in these ways can help you get through school with flying colors, it may not be all it's cracked up to be. Smart people do get ahead in many ways, often finding academic success and opportunities for good jobs. You need to be book smart, for example, to get into most professional schools, such as medical, law, and engineering schools. But being book smart doesn't guarantee success and happiness in life. Being emotionally intelligent, as described in this chapter and throughout this book, brings you much closer to achieving personal and even professional fulfillment. Defining emotional intelligence. Psychologists have proposed several definitions of emotional intelligence, EI, but the original intent was to understand how some people who are so smart in some ways, have book smarts, can be so dumb in other ways, lack street smarts. A person can have book smarts, but not street smarts, because of a lack of emotional awareness and control or emotional intelligence. For example, you can probably think of a politician who was brilliant and ready to change the world. Then, out of nowhere, or so it seemed, came a sexual scandal or charges of taking bribes. The politician couldn't manage his or her sexual appetite or greed well enough, or long enough, to realize a successful political career. In the opposite situation, say that a student in school has a great deal of difficulty mastering math, grammar, and literature. He finds getting a grade as high as a C a real challenge. But he has this huge network of friends, gets invited to every party, is the trendiest kid in class, keeps up with everything and everyone, and is known as a great kid by adults as well. He makes all the right life decisions in spite of academic challenges. Not everyone struggles in this area, and the great news is that practice makes better. You always have the potential to improve. You can spot emotionally intelligent people pretty quickly. They're the people who successfully manage difficult situations, express themselves clearly, gain respect from others, influence other people, entice other people to help them out, keep cool under pressure, recognize their emotional reactions to people or situations, know how to say the right thing to get the right result, manage themselves effectively when negotiating, manage other people effectively when negotiating, motivate themselves to get things done, know how to be positive, even during difficult situations. Remember, although these behaviors don't fit within any formal definition of emotional intelligence, they represent typical behaviors for a person high in emotional intelligence. If the bar sounds high, don't fret. With practice, you can build on your existing skills to become more emotionally intelligent. Getting a handle on your emotions. More than most people think, folks judge you based on your actions rather than how much you know. We value the people who care about others more than those who can memorize the periodic table. The trick is being able to control your behavior, and you can't change how you behave if you're unaware of your emotions. For more information on how to become aware of your emotions, see Chapter 5. Sometimes the easiest way to explain emotional intelligence is to use an anecdote, which I do often in this book. Claudio, for example, is unaware of his emotions and therefore is not in control of his behavior when he ambles into his office, throws his papers on his desk, and slumps into his chair. The look on his face could read, "Beware of dog." His assistant, Jan, comes into his office, brings him his usual cup of coffee. "Here's your coffee, Claudio," she chirps. Claudio just grunts and has a get-out-of-my-hair expression. "Something wrong?" she asks. "Not really. Could you please fix the Jackson file and get it ready?" he snorts. Jan's shocked. He never treats her like that. She must have done something terribly wrong to be spoken to like that. She finds it hard to pay attention to her work for the rest of the morning. She can only think about what she must have done wrong. Claudio is feeling in a bad mood. He can't quite put his finger on what's wrong, and that makes him angrier. He has already alienated several people at work and 2 people at the coffee shop. Something's eating away at him, and he can feel it in his stomach. Claudio really uses the wrong way of dealing with bad feelings. By wallowing in them, you don't move ahead. In the 1950s and 1960s, many psychologists felt that you had to fully experience your bad or negative feelings in order to get over them. Most psychologists and psychiatrists now know that theory isn't true. The most prominent therapies today stress learning approaches, such as cognitive behavior therapy, as opposed to catharsis or releasing your anger. Remember, focusing on bad feelings tends to keep you in the same rut. Eventually, much of the pain of the bad feeling goes away, but in the long run, you can't move past the feeling without some understanding of why you're feeling the way you do. For Claudio, his day starts out badly when his wife tells him, first thing in the morning, that their son failed an important exam at school. Not only is Claudio angry at his son for not passing, he's also angry at himself for not having been on top of his son's schoolwork. He was too busy at work to pay attention to what was going on. The bad news leads to an argument with his wife. After trying to ignore his feelings, he leaves for work. Claudio has a close encounter with a red BMW that cuts him off when it enters the highway. He's enraged over the experience. Had it not been for the bad start to the morning, it probably wouldn't have bothered him so much. By the time he gets to the office, everything's bothering him. The office waiting room's messy, nobody's available at the front reception desk, and he drops his keys on the way to his office. His mood is one big, angry blah. Everyone in his path assumes that he's angry at them. Jan, for example, thinks of a number of things that she might have messed up and thus caused Claudio's anger. If Claudio was more emotionally intelligent, he'd have the following advantages. He'd know what each of his negative feelings was about. Disappointment in his son. Anger for not paying attention to his son. Anger at arguing with his wife. Anger at the driver who cut him off. Anger at his office manager for not tidying up the reception area. Anger at his receptionist for not being at her desk. By identifying these emotions, he could contain them and keep them proportional, taking the following actions. Let Jan know that he was upset about something that had nothing to do with her, allowing her to focus on her work. Manage each emotion separately and not roll them all together into one big undirected angry ball. Use his first 20 to 30 minutes in the office more constructively by cooling off his emotions through various coping strategies. See Chapter 6. Be more productive the rest of the day. Resolve how he plans to deal with his son in a constructive way when he gets home, instead of just being angry at him. Be better able, in general, to deal with small frustrations around the office. Remember, people can improve their emotional intelligence, but not everyone can be a superstar in all areas. Some people take to the skills like a duck takes to the water, and for others, changing is a struggle. Two important factors for people who can effectively change are their motivation and their willingness to practice by using exercises such as the activities that appear throughout this book. Tip: building your emotion.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?